A common question often posed to atheists is, can you prove that God doesn't exist? And while doing so is impossible, it's a point that some will use to argue for the existence of a higher power. Now, on a basic level, all people understand that if a claim is made, the burden of proof lies on the person making that claim. If I say to someone that there is an invisible dragon that only I can see, they'd think I was crazy. If I then say to them, prove there isn't an invisible dragon, they would find this to be an irrational request. Because when it comes to most claims, almost everyone is able to use logic in assessing the evidence presented and come to their own conclusion to whether or not they believe it. But theists are unable to make the jump and use that same rational reasoning when it comes to God, even though they have no real evidence to support it. Because belief in a higher power has been a baseline of truth for much of humanity's history. Atheism is a minority position, so many people have never been forced to justify their beliefs beyond Scripture. God's existence is just a given fact, and if that fact is questioned, the only option is to turn off that reason and logic. Now, discussing this with a theist will never win you an argument, because they will do one of two things. Either they'll try to provide proof by means of their own experiences or miracles they claim to have seen, as if their personal relationship with God proves his existence. Or they will say they don't need proof because they have faith. Now, faith is a necessary part of almost all religions. It's a requirement, because it's the most effective way to indoctrinate followers and hold on to belief in the face of arguments against the validity of religious claims. For many Christians, this faith is the most important element of their belief. It trumps all other tenets. If you have complete faith, then you will be saved. Faith is considered a virtue, an ultimate good. But in reality, it's an excuse to believe the irrational. It's a mechanism that religious institutions use to maintain control. Have faith in our God or face the consequences. People who in all other facets of life are rational in reasoning believe in dangerous and destructive ideas purely because of their faith in a being who they think is constantly judging them. Now, this is not to say that faith only causes bad deeds. Faith is used to justify good actions and behavior as well. But you don't need faith to be good, and moral behavior is not necessarily hinged to one's religious belief. This predominant view of faith creates a situation where being moral is secondary. That's why many theists judge a person's character not on what they do, but what they think. Belief supersedes action. This is one of the most dangerous views one can hold, and leads to everything from intolerance to bigotry to, at worst, full-on genocide. And on an individual level, one may argue that faith is positive and turns people's lives around. It gives people hope who are in dire circumstances. It gives many people something to live for. But as a whole, faith has been a detriment to the progression of knowledge and understanding in this world. That's why we need to educate. We need to grow young minds to always be curious and skeptical, and seek the truth rather than blindly accepting the ideology of their parents or community. We need to expose the true harm that policies of religious institutions have on the world. We need to perpetuate healthy and constructive secular thinking. We can't just fight the idea of God. Rather, we have to fight for a world where the idea of God is no longer necessary. Now, some theists will claim that it takes more faith not to believe in God. But this is nonsensical. Does it take more faith for them not to believe in Bigfoot than someone who does? It all comes down to what an individual perceives as fact or fiction. And if what they perceive as fact is not supported by any evidence, thus becoming a fiction, then faith is required to maintain that position. But faith does not prove the existence of God. Personal experience does not prove the existence of God. And it's not your responsibility to prove theists wrong.